Welcome back, Buccaneers fans, to another episode of Hear the Cannons presented by BucsGameday.com. I am Caleb at CHS Noel on X. Along with me, as always, is River Wells at River H Wells. We're here on part of BucsGameday.com, Sports Illustrated's one and only website strictly dedicated to your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A lot to talk about. We've had plenty of training camp practice at this point, starting to lose track, but I've been to two of them. River's been to every single one.
Six, yes.
There you go. Better on Rivers, and I'm off, man. I'm off. It's so bad.
Tisk.
But a lot to talk about. Injury news, some new signings that are going on, with some injuries going down, of course, with that happening. But we got a special guest on tonight, and without further ado, River, let's go ahead and bring on Fox Sports' own Greg Auman. Greg, how are you doing tonight, man?
It's good.
Good, man. Thanks for having me on. Hope you guys are doing well.
For sure. Yeah, so a lot's happened in training camp so far in 6 days. We've had a lot of hot practices, and we had a night practice, thankfully, on Tuesday, which is some reprieve from the heat. But let's start with some, breaking-ish news. The Bucs have had two signings today. One running back, Owen Wright, and another wide receiver just a few minutes ago, Jaden Smith. Why don't you tell us about those about those players, that running back and wide receiver, and what they're offering to the Bucs at this point in training camp?
Yeah, we've kind of known. Todd Bowles had mentioned a couple of positions where they're shorthanded because of injuries. They've worked out a quarterback today. Sometimes you worry that they bring in a quarterback just to throw to the other guys at the workout. So they didn't sign. They actually brought in Jordan McLeod, former USF guy, bounced around Texas State, all over the place. Didn't sign him. But yeah, they've got both of the Williams running backs, Josh and DJ, were sidelined last night, Thursday night, or no, what?
Tuesday.
Sorry,
Yeah.
All
on track.
Both of those are sidelined, and we kind of asked Bowles, hey, if they're both sidelined, you don't want to necessarily go through camp with just your three best backs as the only backs getting reps. So decided to get him Owen Wright, as you said. Owen was a veteran tryout player at rookie minicamp in May. Had been with the Ravens, actually played in the NFL with the Ravens, I think in 23. Missed last year, I think, on IR. But, good guy, has 4.56 speed. Good college runner, had a decent preseason. He actually had a really good preseason game against the Bucs in 23. Ran for 90 yards and a touchdown in that game. So really just, again, if Owen Wright even sticks on the practice squad, he's done really well. It's just one of those where you need a certain amount of healthy bodies in camp. If you don't have that, you're kind of putting yourself at risk of somebody getting overworked and having an injury to somebody more meaningful. So Owen Wright comes in a little bit more experienced than the two Williams guys, but those three are probably just competing for the same running back on the practice squad job. But again, somebody they've worked with, someone who's been in the league, makes sense to somebody that should be able to come in and handle things right away. And then that was the first. And then the second signing is a big receiver, a kid named Jaden Smith, 6'6", 210. So we'll say lanky for that. It's went to Nevada last year. Good numbers last year, 62 catches, 849 yards, 7 touchdowns. Undrafted, didn't really get a whole lot of looks even in camp. Bucs had him in as a tryout player in minicamp, liked him but didn't sign him. They don't really need more receivers. They got great receiver depth already. The easy read is that they don't have a lot of size in their depth at receiver, and then having a 6'6" guy would, if you kept him on the practice squad, would let you simulate big, tall receivers when you got Drake London coming up. When you have a big receiver in town, it's hard for those 5'11" guys to simulate the tall guys. So I'm
sure Mike Evans isn't exactly taking those reps in practice.
Right, exactly.
Scout team.
You don't throw Mike on the scout team. He can simulate some size for you. But anyway, Jaden Smith, it's Montana State to Tarleton State to Nevada, which is, I'm sure that's a first-time trifecta to get to the NFL.
It's like scoregami for college.
Right?
Yeah.
Nowadays with these transfers, it used to just be 2 schools. Now it's bam, 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 three schools to get there.
Yeah.
But anyway, just short term. Sometimes these tryout guys, they impress and they're gone 3 days later, or they're on the practice squad. So it'll be fun to see how it shakes out. Lots of good receivers. Again, from the start, you don't have to worry about the 53. He's just trying to make a spot on the practice squad. If he does that, great signing.
Yeah, I'm talking to Rick last night when we were watching from the stands. Rick Stroud, obviously of Tampa Bay Times. We were talking about how Mike Evans being in there in the turf. We're like, oh man, can we just pull him at some point? So bringing another tall wide receiver to be able to take Mike out of the receiver. And then obviously watching Sean Tucker get carry after carry after carry last night as well inside the indoor practice facility was just like, he's getting some good run, which we all love to see, of course, but you kind of want to mix him in with Rachaad White and, Bucky Irving during the regular season. You don't want him to get injured either. So really good that the Buccaneers went out and got this. But another injury that happened, we do know David Walker, Buccaneers 4th round draft pick in 2025, supposed to, be contributing there on the edge. Going to be out for the rest of the season with a torn ACL very early in camp. Very unfortunate, but as we all know, this tends to happen at least once a year when it comes to training camp. Pretty much for every team, there's at least one serious injury. What is that impact going to have on the Buccaneers from their edge rusher room? I know a lot of people were paying attention to Braswell last night, seeing what he was going to be able to do because of his absence. So what do you see that impact being there, Greg?
Yeah, Bucs really like David Walker. This is a bummer. A good kid, small school, really impressed. Probably their 5th outside linebacker if things went as normal, kind of rotating in. But again, a smaller guy where you could have seen him being a pass rush specialist, a nickel outside guy, speed rusher. So no, it hurts that they lose him. I think obviously Diaby and Reddick are going to be your main 2. Nelson and Braswell, probably not even that order. Those 2 are really going to be, those 4 are going to get 85-90% of your pass rush reps.
Right.
So again, David Walker had a chance to really come in and just kind of, it's kind of like a spot start. You come in, you're getting maybe 15 snaps a game. If you get, a couple hurries, a sack here and there, you've done really well. So now, if a 5th outside linebacker would be, you're looking at the 2 guys they have the last 2 years in Marquise Watts and Jose Ramirez. Watts has played more of the 2. He's got 12 games, I think, in his career.
Mm-hmm.
Jose Ramirez has been around for 2 years, but really just practice squad. So those 2 both have a chance to step up, to show something, if you will. The only other edge rusher on the roster is Warren Peoples, who is another guy that kind of bounced around in college. He's a 5 college guy. Warren Peoples, 5.
That's a lot of colleges.
5 schools in 5 years. He went, I think it's 2 JUCOs. He finished at Memphis, and he was at Memphis and went to like one of your directional Louisiana schools. I don't have it in front of me, but like Southeastern Louisiana, something like that. But 5 schools in 5 years, and like no more than like 5 sacks in any of them. So it's always really cool where not only have they been a lot of places, it's a trait signing. Like he's not numbers jump. I mean, like David Walker's a guy who had like 80 tackles for loss in college, just a ridiculous number, was productive everywhere he went. Peoples isn't that. Peoples is like just cool traits, smallish, but quick, good burst. Anyway, those are the guys that are competing. This is a position where if the right vet came back, people were wondering about Shaq Barrett. Shaq Barrett would like to play. Drew Rosenhaus said they reached out to the Bucs. Bucs haven't signed him yet. So that might be one of those where if they're unhappy with what they want, I think they know that Shaq Barrett would be available for him. There's lots of other vets. I mean, again, guys on Twitter want like Zadarius Smith to come in. This is a rotational replacement. So
yeah,
you can offset it pretty easily. It's 50 more snaps for Nelson, 50 more snaps for Braswell, somebody else being active on Sundays. Again, a bad loss. They don't want to lose a 4th round pick ever, but not like radically changing the room where you got to go out and spend $10 million on a vet or something.
And I had like a curious thought on, this as well when I was, watching practice yesterday. And this is all just considering of how he played in college. And that's Elijah Roberts, right? He played edge. He also moved inside. So if worse comes to worse, you could move him around a little bit, even though, the Buccaneers looked at him as an interior guy.
Yeah, Elijah Roberts is like 295 now is the thing. So I think everybody got mixed up because at the draft, when they drafted him, they called him an edge. And he'd be like a 3-4 edge in the same way that like Will Golston kind of was an edge. But he's probably he's in your Will Golston, Logan Hall, smallish, quick defensive lineman, but probably not an edge. If they had him like fasting since the draft, maybe, but I think if anything, they made it bigger. So that would work. And again, like I'm sure there's packages where you could put Elijah Roberts outside, and he's quick enough at work. I don't think he would work out in the outside linebacker room. I don't think he would be a guy. I mean, you think about how small David Walker is by comparison. It's hard to replace that. But Elijah Roberts is probably like DL5. I mean, if you think about Will Golston not being brought back, I would put him ahead of kind of the Mike Green, CJ Brewer types that were the last D linemen on the roster most of last year. But I mean, that top 4 is fairly set in terms of I think we know that it's going to be the bread and butter is going to be Cansey, Vea, Logan Hall, Greg Gaines coming in off the bench. Elijah Roberts is probably next right now. Probably dressing on Sundays as a fifth defensive lineman. He might be somebody who's athletic enough. You don't get many D linemen that can help you on teams, but he might be able to play some special teams as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of things they could do there. And the defense as a whole, I think, has been showing out in camp so far. Been pretty impressive. You get the secondary making plays. We've seen guys like Hassan Reddick with a really strong get-off, and Yaya Diaby's getting back there for those training camp sacks, the whistle blowing whenever they get close to the quarterback. And with that in mind, there's been a lot of people talking about how the last two practices, the offense has kind of struggled a little bit. You see in the heat, they were kind of off, and then in the indoor practice facility on Tuesday, at nighttime even, they struggled in red zone work. Things weren't really connecting. I wanted to ask your opinion, because I've written a little bit about this myself, but what do you take away from these training camp sort of scrimmages when you have a side of the ball that's doing really well or doing really poorly? And I know a lot of people say it's just camp, so don't take anything away from it, but what's the most valuable thing that you can look at? How much of what happens with like hot streaks and cold streaks really matters going into the regular season?
Yeah, it's tricky because like every year there's like a camp darling that has like 4 picks in practice and we're all excited and barely makes the cut, or doesn't make the cut, makes the cut.
Right.
So I think like a third of your passes right now in camp are being thrown by Connor Basilek. So
right,
a third on third pick isn't all that significant. Baker's had a lot of picks, but Baker will tell you he uses training camp and preseason to recalibrate what he can get away with. He sees a window. Can he make that throw? And if on a July morning, if it gets picked off, it's like, okay, maybe that's not a throw. Maybe I can't thread that in there, And the penalty is, okay, you had a practice pick. That's it. As opposed to not knowing in October when he needs to make a throw in a really tight space, he doesn't know if he can hit it or not. So it's one of those. He likes to talk about recognizing the perspective and the circumstance of the play and not throwing a pass that's not in line with that. If you're down, if you're down 7 late, maybe you try that throw, because if you don't move the chains, game's over. If it's a tie game in the second quarter, you probably throw the ball away and don't try and put it in there. So I think the net result, it's like you'll hear Bulls talk all the time about, every time there's this zero sum where, hey, nice play by the defense. No, nice play given up by the offense, or vice versa. And I think given how hard turnovers were to come by last year, the defense gets 7 picks as a team. Anytime a DB is holding on to a pick, that's something fans should celebrate. Even though a Bucs quarterback threw it, if there was a chance to make an interception and they made good on it, that's what you want to see right now. And it's not something you've always seen in August, in October, any month of the year. So right now, I think like Benjamin Morrison had a really nice kind of spinning interception. We saw Bryce Hall has had like 2 really nice tight coverage picks. So again, you can look at it either way. You can say, oh, the offense is struggling. I put almost no stock into what you see in the run game right now. It's barely contact.
Right.
That's hitting. They can go by and kind of slap somebody in the back as a reminder, hey, I could have hit you. But you'll have these amazing plays in practice that are a beautiful throw and a beautiful catch. And the reality is it already was a sack, and the safety would have taken the guy's head off if he could.
Right.
For sure. There was one play I remember in camp that there's a big Mike Evans play to start off 11v11s. And Antoine Winfield was running just full speed at him and tapped him on the shoulder. And I think I was next to you, Caleb. I was like, yeah, that's a live play. He gets decapitated.
Right.
Right.
Like you'll hear, it's cool because like we haven't even had that many. They haven't really blown a lot of whistles in camp so far. In general, they want the play to carry out, because if you blow the play dead, the receiver and the DB didn't get a chance to get a rep on the play. Basically. Right. So they're going to let it go, even though it clearly was a sack. Like you'll hear, if you listen, like you'll hear that like, whoo, like you'll hear this like chirp as you go by the quarterback, just to make sure the quarterback knows that, hey, by the way, I would have had you.
Yeah.
I can't sack you right now. But in September, that's a sack. And the quarterback, to their credit, they know to kind of just not worry about the pass rush. You're not getting sacked. Play through the rep, make the throw. There's different ways to look at it. I think right now, I would think of it as a net positive. DB's making plays, not quarterbacks unable to make throws or anything like that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it makes sense. And like you mentioned, training camp really is a time to experiment. It's a time to kind of think about what you can and can't do, to try new things, to build more chemistry. And as a result, it can look like, oh, this passes is going to the dirt. These play calls aren't really working. But at the same time, this is the time for them to not work, right? So,
Right.
like you mentioned, in
You
October,
work through, and
not the best time.
they'll tell you that they want to do that. They would rather. It's kind of just testing the limits. What can you get away with? And if you know it now, you're better for it when there's actual consequences to the same mistake. So like 2 years ago, again, like about this time 2 years ago was when like, man, Mayfield has 9 interceptions and Trask has 1. Maybe this really is a competition. And it's like, no, it's just one guy. One guy likes pushing the envelope and the other one's probably being a little bit too safe.
Right.
So again, if it comes up again, if we got 5 picks tomorrow, it's something you kind of ask about. But Bowles generally is one that can put things into perspective and not overreact, if you will.
Yeah, in typical Todd Bowles fashion, I'm sure he wasn't necessarily pleased with how yesterday unfolded, especially with the offense struggling the way that they did. But the young guys obviously showing out, finally seeing, Morrison finally get a pick. He's been playing well, but getting an interception there after getting beat by Mike, after Mike just did his veteran thing and, cut off his route and ran a different route. Baker had him open. And then we've seen what Jacob Parrish has been able to do. He wasn't necessarily at the level last night as we've seen him throughout the rest of camp. And then on the opposite side of the ball, Emeka is kind of coming into form, kind of becoming
a lot of praise heading up.
That we're all expecting him to be. But before we get into that, guys, if you're watching anywhere other than YouTube, please head over there, like, comment, and subscribe. That's where we can get your questions on here. If you got questions for Greg, you got questions for any of us, go ahead. If you guys just want to talk to each other in the chat, feel free to talk to each other in the chat.
Just ignore us, actually. Just talk to each other.
It's always a pleasure to see what you guys are talking about over there. But also, we always root for 50 likes, try to get to 50 likes. So if you are watching on YouTube, please smash that like button. We truly do appreciate it. And if you are liking the content that we're putting out here, click that subscribe button. Click that notification button. You'll be alerted every single time we're going live.
Hit that bell, baby.
Yeah, there we go. I'm just trying to roll. Let's go. But yeah, offense looking good. I know it's hard without Chris there, but Emeka looking good. Tez, his release off of the line of scrimmage is something I am just very blown away by just watching.
He had one against Bryce Hall that was particularly lethal.
So if you could just touch on those guys a little bit, and then what are you really seeing from Charlie Heck? Because I felt like the defensive line was getting a lot of pressure, specifically last night in particular. So if you could touch on those two things, I'd be very curious to see what your thoughts are.
Yeah, Tez Johnson, really cool. I don't know if I was on with you guys or somebody else, but like Tez Johnson, I was in Mobile at Senior Bowl, and Tez, it was neat. Somebody from Sumer Sports is like an analytics site, and we're sitting there watching practice, and basically it's kind of like RAS. RAS is that like score for raw athleticism.
Relative athletic score.
Relative athleticism, right. And they have I forget what Sumer calls their RAS equivalent, but Tez Johnson like has the best score of any player in any year they've had this stat. So we're watching him in Mobile at Senior Bowl, and it's like he's small. Okay, he's smaller than you expect in NFL shape, but in terms of making people miss, making people look bad, Mobile they had just one-on-one receiver on DB drills, and that's his absolute wheelhouse. If it's just a one-on-one, they don't know which way you're going. It's kind of like a street basketball player in that it can make people look absolutely silly. And he did it with Bryce Hall the other night. When Bryce lines up in one-on-one drills, I will watch the other receivers because they're watching him and they're like losing their minds at the moves he makes. Now, again, size is something that he can make those moves when he knows he's not really getting pushed around physically too much.
Right.
Hit. But, normally 7th-round picks, you go into camp with a 7th-round pick, and you're thinking maybe it's like a 50-50 shot for him to get in. And when they drafted him, it's like, wow, that's a good pick, but I don't even know if he makes the cut. And now I think most people, when we're projecting rosters and looking at things, I think of him as being on the team right now.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they have like 9 guys that played receiver and dressed and caught passes last year, I think I'm presuming right now he's going to get the punt return job
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair.
And I think he'll be active on Sundays because of that. And now he kind of steps in as almost receiver 5, and that's ahead of Shep, who's obviously a decade more proven. It's ahead of you think about Ryan Miller, Trey Palmer. You think about Rocky Jarrett. There's about 4 guys that probably would be ahead of him, but I think they're all chasing him right now. And again, it's like their receiver group. They could carry 7 if they know Godwin's hurt in week 1, they might carry an extra receiver knowing that. So maybe you get to carry 7, but I still think there are guys they cut that will land, that will get claimed and will be on another 53.
It won't take long for any of those guys to get picked up, in my opinion.
So like I said, Tez Johnson, absolutely fun to watch. There's probably nobody right now, maybe like Morrison and Parrish on the other side, but there's nobody else that I'm watching more just to see what he can do. So comfortable, like a little guy sometimes they don't like going across the middle of the field. He's very comfortable going across the middle, getting in traffic. It's neat to see. I mean, again, super, super confident guy. If you're 155, 160 pounds in the NFL, you're going to have to be a very confident guy. But
sure. Yeah. They even had him blocking on screens sometimes.
Right, exactly. Like,
wow.
The best use of him. You can be a willing blocker, but if you're still giving up 30 pounds to a DB,
doesn't matter how big you are.
Yeah, don't make him do that. But there's lots of other things he can do that I think will get him right now. I mean, again, all it takes is him muffing a punt in the preseason game. There's things he can do to hurt himself, but I think of him as being in and having to play his way off the team right now.
And the way that he's kind of connected with the locker room with Mike Evans and immediately just come in and kind of fit alongside everybody really helps his chances as well.
Yeah, I mean, they've thrown him out there. They're promoting him like he's a 4th-round pick or something like that. You know, they've put him out there prominently, just somebody fans are excited about. And again, it's a 7th-round pick. I mean, Jason Light's history with 7th-round pick is not good, sticking at all. So I mean, he has a real chance.
Yeah, that's interesting, especially because, like you mentioned, a lot of those guys don't stick. But now Tez got some buzz whenever he did get drafted. I thought, especially as your 2nd receiver after emeka egbuka got drafted. So that's 2 that they brought into an already loaded room. And with that kick return job, I think that's going to be the biggest reason why he gets to make a spot on this 53-man roster. And that's probably why.
The end of the draft is tricky in that, like, essentially, I always think about you're using a 7th-round pick to get somebody wouldn't necessarily choose your team after the draft. Because if I'm a really good receiver and I get passed over in the draft, Tampa's the last place I would want to go.
Which is funny because Tez keeps talking about, I'm reunited with Bucky. I love playing in Tampa Bay. And I'm like, well, from an actual perspective, you're kind of shuffled down the order.
From a personality standpoint, it's perfect for him. From a logistics, what are the chances of me making the roster? I don't know if you'd find 5 teams that would be harder for a late-round pick or an undrafted guy to stick than the Bucs. And yet here he is.
Yep.
It'll be interesting to see what happens.
We have a question here from Bryce Pat 98. Who will be nickel corner Tyke? Does Morrison siphon snaps from Dean, or does Tyke stay at safety then?
Well, I will, before you begin, Greg, I will mention those first 2 reps that we have with Benjamin Morrison, where he gave up the rep against Mike Evans and they got the pick. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think he was in for Jamel Dean during those 2 reps. Yeah. So that's something to note, I think, for sure.
Yeah, like I asked Bowles after practice about him being comfortable throwing Morrison in with the ones. And it's not to say that he's a starter. I think they just want to see how he handles it, which is neat because, like, Bowles, I mean, in the 6 years he's been here, Todd tends to be a guy who has a starting cornerback pair and stays with them unless they die. Like, they don't come off the field. He doesn't rotate in. And there's some places that will. There's some places that, like, every 3rd series you go with a different look. And I wondered last night if, again, no disrespect to Dean or McCollum, if that could be a 3-man rotation. And based on, if they just had a 10-play drive, if you want fresh legs in there, you could sub in Morrison. I'm presuming the vets are starting right now, but you could sub him in and rotate him in. And it might be at the end of the day, the snaps are 60-60-20 between the 3 of them. But I think they'd like to get him in to see what he can do. And that way, if there is an injury that throws him into the fire, he's played. He's had some snaps. Last night felt like that because it's like I'm looking out there. Sometimes they'll have a defense that's like the one secondary and the second line or some kind of mix and match defense. This was a one defense that had him with McCollum on the field. And you look over and you're like, is Jamel hurt? No, Jamel's fine. And he's coming back in like 2 plays later, but it was a cool 2-play sequence because he got beat by Evans, and it was kind of one of those where Evans adjusted to the route and Morrison couldn't quite get there, and Mike 6'5" and went up and made the catch. But then the next play, like Morrison dropped a little deeper, and I don't know if it was the same route. It was almost the same spot on the field, like 25, 28 yards downfield on the left side, and he was right there. And he went up and came down with the pick. So, like I said, it was neat in that, like Todd said, that when you take a backup and you throw them in with the ones, there are some guys that like, kind of cower and don't hand these. There's others that respond. Yeah. And he said, last night Benjamin Morrison responded. So he's doing all the right things. He's not in a position where he has to step in, second round pick. It might be that he's a special teams guy the first couple weeks of the season. But if there's injuries, if the starting corners aren't doing what they want, they will not hesitate to throw him in there. He's a better challenger to a starting job than they've had in their depth since like the Murphy Bunting versus Dean years 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's interesting to see them kind of rotate that in, and we'll see how it goes during camp. I think definitely there's a competitive sort of aspect there. And Benjamin Morrison told us, he said, I think it'd be wrong to come in here and not think that I could take one of those spots. So that'll be fun. On the nickel question.
Yeah, the other question they'd asked real quick was Tyke. Tyke Smith will be a safety. He's now a safety. He's an every down player, which speaks really well to what they think about him. I think he can be an upgrade on Jordan Whitehead. I think he is versatile enough where having him and Antoine really makes for some disguises and multiple looks and defense and changes in the back end. Both really smart, both really versatile. I think Jacob Parrish will be the nickel. Christian Izien would be right there
like that.
Him, but every time I see Parrish, it's working as the first nickel. Izien's probably the third safety, and the second nickel, invaluable and has a history of stepping up and handling things well. But I think you take a guy in the third round, you want him on the field. So I think just as Tyke was that guy last year, came as a nickel, Parrish is there, Smith is at safety. Those three are really, really versatile guys. So it wouldn't surprise me to see different looks where one guy is suddenly a blitzing guy at the line of scrimmage. They can use those three in their versatility to create some really good misdirections too.
What had me worried about that a little bit watching last night was that if Antoine's coming down, which we know Antoine will come down, I remember watching Tyke come like hauling, straight to a wide receiver and hitting him so fast. But that leaves so much field behind him that if he bites on that for a second, is he going to have the hip fluidity to flip and be able to have the speed as well to be able to get back to, not allow that big play to happen?
Yeah, it's a good question. And we don't know. I mean, it's one of those where, the more they gamble, the more they have, there are plays where the guy who looks like a box safety at the snap is hauling 15 yards back, and he's actually the deep safety on the play. So there's lots of different looks. And again, like
Todd loves his disguises. Yeah.
Right. I feel like they handled themselves well against the deep ball for the most part last year. There were a couple breakdowns, but I think that's something they handled well, and it's something they do despite lots of exotic blitzes from guys on the back end. There are guys that, pre-snap are 15 yards off, and they'll come up. It'll be a delayed blitz. There's lots of things they do to, I guess, just overload the quarterbacks, what you think is coming and reading and all those kind of things. So I think that probably outweighs the physical. Can they adjust? Can they cover the deep ball? So those concerns are going to be there just because two of their three in that rotation are going to be new or at least in different roles.
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on with the defense, some new toys to play with. And speaking of which, we have a question from D13 here. He asked that once makes me to know how Roberts is looking versus Hall so far. See anything? I think Roberts has looked pretty impressive so far in camp. And, of course, Logan Hall coming back after one of his better campaigns last year. So what kind of things are you seeing in that rotation? So far, when I've seen Roberts, I've been pretty impressed with what he's able to do in this short period of time.
So I was reading that at first, like J.J. Roberts and Bryce Hall, but this is Elijah Roberts.
Who knows? Maybe answer both.
Yeah. There's so many last name confusion type things. Roberts I haven't really seen him do that much. It's like I think we talked to, I forget who we talked to in the D-line that brought him up, talked about his length, a longer, long arm guy. If you look at his numbers in college from a production standpoint, from a pressure standpoint, had one of the better pressure rates there is. So I think sometimes you have the pressure from inside, which you think of Vea and that kind of, and you have obviously the edge rushers. But I think there's a middle ground there with like Logan Hall. I thought took a step forward in terms of actual sacks and pressures from between those two. If you can just benefit, if you have Vea and Cansey on your front, that third guy is absolutely getting not only single covered, but probably the best matchup of the three. Mm-hmm. So if you can get that, when they're in a 5-man front, there's going to be somebody that should get a really good look. And I think what Golston did and what Logan has done is they're still really good against the run. They're really solid. They get more tackles than you expect a D lineman to get. And I think if Elijah just follows in that path, they could make him bigger. I mean, he's one of those where I think like early in the draft process was getting listed at like 285. They list him at 295 now. So Golston had that thing really early in his career where they would like yo-yo him from year to year. And one team would think he's definitely a 3-tech. Then they'd bulk him up and he's 15 pounds bigger the next year. So they'll figure out where exactly they can use Roberts. I think they felt like he's somebody that can line up multiple places, can be inside in a nickel front. There's different things he can do. But again, I would think of him. I mean, Gaines is somebody who probably comes in more when Vea isn't in and you want a big body in there, and they're kind of one or the other. But I think the rest of them, I mean, Cansey, in terms of body type, he's not as quick as Cansey, but has size, has some length. It'll be neat to see how, we think about them and the pressure and the sacks and where sacks will come from. And if there's 50 sacks, you sit there and say, wow, okay, how's it going to split up? Is it 30 from edge rushers and 15 from the interior and 5 from linebackers? And it's hard to know where that comes through because there's guys that could break out from all of those spots. Like I think, again, like if you were just handicapping the team sack race right now, you'd probably say like Reddick over Diaby over Cansey maybe as the top 3. Vea's tempting because Vea could come in there and kind of beat all of them. But then I also think that having 2 quick, smart, versatile linebackers in David and now in Dennis, they could blitz those guys too. I mean, it's one of those where they could be a defense that has like 6 guys with 5+ sacks on the way to 50. And again, these types, we don't think about. Logan Hall's in a contract year. Logan Hall has a chance to, if he can be like an 8-sack guy, make a lot of money in March, whether it's with the Bucs.
I would love 8 sacks from Logan Hall.
What's that?
I would love 8 sacks from Logan Hall.
Right. I think we pencil him in for like 4 or 5 and think that he's going to have that kind of same kind of production where his goal, his role in that defense probably is not to be the guy to the quarterback. He can be the guy that gets the quarterback because he got flushed away from somebody else, though. Mm-hmm. And it's a matter of whether he takes advantage. If he gets the ones that he can get an arm out and reach and grab somebody, that can be 10 tackles for loss in a season, just as the beneficiary of pressure coming from elsewhere.
Yeah. You got anything else, River?
Yeah, I want to leave us with one last thing. There's a lot of players that people talk about during camp for various reasons. So I figured I would get your take on if any players in particular you thought have been doing really well for themselves in this training camp, as far as maybe getting a promotion of the depth chart or going to make the team, and then maybe one player you think has not done well for themselves or might be losing out on one of those positions or might be in danger of the roster cuts or something like that.
Yeah, I think the guys we talked about for the most part have been, again, Egbuka is a first-round pick, so everybody knew he'd be good. I just think it's cool that he came in with so much unmitigated praise, just absolutely everybody loving who he is on and off the field. And it's kind of bank that you come in now with really high expectations, and there was a point where you would have been like, gosh, who's going to have more catches and touchdowns this year, Egbuka or McMillan? And in like June, that's like, I'm not sure about that. I think it's Egbuka now. I think
everyone who's watched him has just talked about how smooth he is, how much of a he plays like a vet. He's just plug and play, just like Baker Mayfield mentioned.
And if Godwin isn't there in week 1, he's probably a solid receiver 2 now. He's probably an 8 target, lots of involved in the screen game, really involved. Will probably outsnap McMillan. Will probably outsnap whoever's behind them. And honestly, it's one of those where there's so much Godwin in him in terms of size, in terms of willingness to block, in terms of skill set. Again, he's a rookie, and we're comparing him to whatever 7th-year Godwin. But
right,
in terms of just how you like a player, the skill set you like to have, the versatility to move him around for all three positions, he could easily out-snap Mike, okay? Because they're going to have Mike, careful, not using him too much.
Right.
He could easily out-snap Mike, at least until Godwin gets healthy.
Yeah.
And I think they really like the versatility of if Mike is there, of having Godwin, Egbuka, and McMillan interchangeable in three spots. And if it means that Godwin doesn't have to play 85% of the offensive snaps and can play less and lower the injury risk, there's not a crazy, terrible drop-off there in terms of production and trust with Mayfield and stuff like that. So again, that's the easy answer, is just that Egbuka hasn't had a bad day yet. McMillan had a day the other day where it was like 2 drops and a ball went off his shoulder pads. And again, it's fine. He's a second-year guy. You don't need him to be perfect. Every time I watch Egbuka, he does what he's supposed to do. And I talked after the draft to Brian Hartline, who's the Ohio State receivers coach, has put just a crazy amount of talent into the NFL. And he was saying the thing that you appreciate the most about Egbuka is that there's so many guys that are inconsistent, and they'll make plays and then they'll take a snap off, or they'll run the wrong route and it'll lead to a pick. And he's like, Egbuka doesn't do that. He doesn't have his attention to detail and kind of the perfectionist aspect. He doesn't have a lot of dumb mistakes like that. So what you don't take for granted, everybody gets excited about the ceiling, but like his floor is exceptionally reliable.
I think that's the most valuable part about him as a prospect, really. Whether or not you think he has superstar potential with his intangibles is one thing, but just to have a guy that can just come in there and find that space he needs to find and be able to run those routes the way he does with that floor is just so valuable for a team who doesn't need to waste too much time getting up to speed.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like how you think about Ohio State in their history, all the receivers that go through Ohio State, you go back to Chris Carter and, absolute NFL stars. And he's still the guy who leads Ohio State's career records in catches and receptions.
Yeah.
It's like played with all the guys he played with. It's like, and did that while competing for passes with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave and
JSN
Smith and Jigba, Jeremiah Smith. There's about 6 good NFL receivers that he had to compete with all the way through college. So like I said, this is one of those where this has gone from a pick that was like, oh, wow, that's kind of a luxury pick. That's just, I guess they think he, can help them more than the position needs they had on defense. And now, like, nobody in the building questions it at all. They're elated they were able to get him. And now it's just a matter of how much he can do. And, is he the guy that makes it hard for Mike Evans to get to 1,000 because he's catching everything thrown his way, taking balls away from the guys that have been nonstop, reliable every year players around him. So,
good problem to have.
In terms of, you asked about disappointments. There's not a ton of guys that have really disappointed in terms of drops or missed assignments or anything like that. Trey Palmer's been a little quiet. I definitely think, Trey Palmer's a guy who is fighting for a job. So I think he needs to be making catches. So right now I just notice, even with, Chris not there, with Mike kind of limited in practice, just haven't seen a ton of passes thrown Trey Palmer's way. There's really probably about one play I can point to and think like, oh, wow, that was a great play. He needs to show up in the next month, or he might be, wearing somebody else's uniform a month from now. That's the tricky part. So.
How funny. Yeah, I did lie. We have one more thing, actually. I think we'll hit on them. We'll head out. D13 mentions, did you all mention Baker's $30 million? What does that mean? I think this is in reference to the guaranteed money that was shifted over to 2026 when he will play in the last year of his current contract. Can you just go over what exactly that money means and what it means for the Bucs and for Mayfield when they do end up negotiating for another contract, which might happen sooner than later, given how he's been playing the last 2 years?
Yeah. So Pete Prisco from CBS is doing the run through camps and talked to Baker, and Baker mentioned that he kind of was saying, hey, Baker kind of underpaid, his quarterbacks go. And Baker made a point to say, well, the big thing with a year left is that he was really hoping he could get some guaranteed money. It's like, he has 2 years left on his contract. In general, teams don't like tearing up contracts or giving guys new contracts when there's 2 years left, because now every time somebody plays well with 2 years left, they're like, oh, we did it for Baker. And they want that. So without breaking that precedent, Baker wants to know if he gets hurt, he's not completely screwed a year from now. And that next year's, as it was, Baker's due to make $40 million next year, but if he's hurt or if he's not playing well, there's no guarantee. So what they did is they went in, they took that $40 million salary, They converted 30 million of it to a roster bonus, which right now is guaranteed against injury, which means, again, if God forbid something happens to Baker, he knows he has that covered. Doesn't have to worry about that. $13 million of that bonus right now is what they call skill pay guaranteed. It's like you can't cut him just because he didn't play well or because you need cap space. So it's $13 million fully guaranteed. Early next year, before free agency, anything else, the other $17 million gets guaranteed. So again, everything is lined. If Baker has a 25 that's anything like his 24, they will want to re-sign him. He wants to be back. I don't think it's going to be a break the bank kind of thing, but I think they'll be able to work out a deal with him. That's a nice bump from the $33 million a year he's making right now. Sets him up to really be the first quarterback in their history. You think about having more than 5 years as a starting quarterback. He could be that guy. I mean, because it'll be 3 years after this year. I'm sure a new deal would be 3-4 years. Baker's not that old where you can't do that right now. So I think he's setting himself up for, if this year is successful, if he's healthy, if he leads them to the playoffs, if he has anything close to 40 touchdowns and 4,500 yards, they like what they have there. They like the leadership he has. They're going to want to reward him. It'll be a new deal ahead of free agency. Well, I mean, he's got a year left. So ahead of anything, he'll get that deal done, and you'll have him as their quarterback. Again, it makes it tough to surround him with talent, because it was nice when they only had to pay him whatever it was, $7 million 2 years ago with the bonuses and the incentives. But I think in today's NFL, there are so many quarterbacks making 45, 50, 55 million a year that aren't in the playoffs and that aren't the leaders that Baker is right now. They're going to want to reward him.
Yeah, it's kind of the positive side of, when he first signed this deal, everybody's like, oh, they've got that like get out of jail free card. But now this is the positive side. Now you got good Baker. So now you don't have that, to worry about anymore. So it's really good to know Baker deserves it. Ultimately, everybody, I think, can agree on the fact that he deserves a contract extension. Tampa is his home. He talks so highly about the organization, the community, everybody from his teammates, on and on and on. So really great. Good for him. Some positive things happening in training camp. A lot of things to be excited about if you're a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. Obviously, the injuries pile up. Those things happen. You got a next man up mentality, and that's what the Buccaneers are doing. They're going to keep rolling along here through the rest of training camp up until the 2025 season. We want to thank every single one of you for tuning in with us tonight. Thank you, Greg, for joining us and hopping on.
Thank you very much. Always insightful.
Yes, always insightful. Brings a lot more insight for me as well, not being able to pay as much attention to it as I would like to be. So it definitely helps me as well as the rest of the fans that are watching. So thank you again. Thank you, River, our lead editor over here at BucsGameday.com, at River H. Wells on X. And my name is Caleb, at CHS No on X, if you feel like following me as well. We're going to keep bringing you guys as much content as we possibly can, whether it's written on the web. So head over to BucsGameday.com, check that out, or here on our YouTube, just type in Bucs Game Day in that search bar and you'll be able to find us. With that being said, River,
fire the cannons.
Fire the cannons.